Morning all. Yeah, hope you're all okay. I've come out today to an area near Wokingham called Pinewood, the Pinewood Leisure Centre, because if you'd been watching the video from last week, I was talking about Thomas Lawrence and his brickworks and how he had a brickworks location at Pinewood. So I thought, oh, I'll come out and have a look. I had a look at the old map and I thought I'll come out and see what there is of the old brickwork site. But as you would imagine, for a kind of like 1890s brickworks, there isn't going to be very much left, and this area of grassland here, which has been turned into a football pitch, was the site of the old brickworks. And I thought, well, that's not going to make a very interesting video. I mean, there's the area to the side here, which may have been old clay pits, but again, not very interesting. So I recall that the area around here, actually the Pinewood Centre, is a collection of old buildings, probably World War II, but it turns out a lot more interesting. So let's go and have a look. So the area around here, the Pinewood Centre, is a collection of World War II buildings, and I thought maybe it might be a barracks or something like that. I don't know, but you never know with World War II buildings. It could be used in anything really, but it turns out it was part of Pinewood Sanatorium, which is a sort of hospital. Originally, the site was called the London Open Air Sanatorium, even though it was in Crowthorne, some 40 miles to the west of London. It was opened by the National Association for the Prevention of Tuberculosis in 1901, following their purchase of the 82 acres of land in 1898. Remember that at this point in time, antibiotics hadn't even been invented, as penicillin was only discovered in 1929, so the shocking reality of tuberculosis treatment was fresh air, healthy food, bed rest, and apparently the smell of pine was thought to be good for the patients. Doctors were able to track the disease as X-rays had been invented in 1895. However, it wasn't until 1950 that an effective antibiotic was created to treat the disease. Initially, they opened with 64 patients, but in the First World War, they were starting to treat victims of gas warfare. In 1919, the Metropolitan Asylums Board took over the running of the site and renamed it Pinewood Sanatorium. In 1929, it was taken over again by London County Council, at which point the sanatorium became a special hospital for thoracic medicine. So, Pinewood Sanatorium eventually closed in 1965. So recent history. And unfortunately the main sanatorium building was actually demolished, and an industrial unit by Johnson & Johnson was built in its place. However, the buildings from World War II were left intact, and some of them were demolished, but some of them were put into better use, and that's what makes up the Pinewood Centre at the moment. Some of the buildings of the World War II era have obviously been knocked down because they would have been unsafe or something. So this building here is the Pinewood Gymnastics Centre, or the back of. So this is clearly a World War II structure. And look at this window, that's definitely 1950s, especially with this toughened glass. Again, another temporary structure. I think this is the judo hall. So you can see here there's a concrete plinth, and there was a building very similar to that one there on this footprint, and then similarly on this kind of like raised area here there was another building just there. So this building, which has obviously been reclad and re-roofed, is in the position of one of the World War II hospital buildings, but you can tell by the windows that these are 1950s, 1940s kind of era. So obviously those have been left. There's also some buildings in the middle of in between each of these blocks, which I'm not too sure of. We're going to go and have a look and see if we can work out what they are. Unfortunately, there's one extinct one that's still here, and each one of these buildings was situated between each of the hospital bays. So I'm just wondering if it's perhaps an air raid shelter. There's only one way in, one way out kind of thing, so perhaps an air raid shelter for the nursing staff, I'm guessing. Notice on this building, although the windows have been replaced, it still has brick chimneys. And I guess if you've ever seen those wartime pictures, they didn't have central heat or anything like that in these kind of buildings. They just had these kind of brazier kind of coal burning, wood burning stoves, which would keep the place warm during the winter months. But obviously not anymore. So obviously these buildings are kind of late 1950s, just by the architectural design of them. And this houses the Pinewood Raceway, which is like an adult's version of a Sky Electric. They've got inside there, they've got two massive tracks for slot car racing, and we've taken our cubs there and our scouts there, and it's always a fantastic evening for the cubs and the leaders, I might mention. Oh yeah. Well, that's obviously World War II, isn't it? That's an old Nissen Hut, isn't it? Anyhow, so on this OS map from 1965, across the other side of the old Wokingham Road, there are these three buildings, and I was intrigued to see whether or not they still exist. So the map from 1965, the OS map, mentions a trackway coming in from about level with the entrance to Pinewood, the Pinewood Leisure Centre. And if you look down here, Moss grows on rock, and this appears to be an old roadway. I know just over to the side here, there's just over where that thing is there, nearly fell into a ditch. So there's a ditch running alongside this roadway, but it's a definite edge. Oh look, there's a tree growing out of a concrete block. Oh, weird. I can see a brick building through the trees there. I'm going to go and have a look at that in a sec. So there, as you can see there, that this metal rib here, that's the kind of roof support that you'd have on a Nissen shed. And that's clearly curved up there, is the over the top of that shed there. So yeah, it's an old Nissen shed, isn't it? And continues on down there. Painted wall plaster. Difficult to say whether this is collapsed or demolition, but slowly being consumed by time. So this is a concrete base, and again another curvature, so definitely a Nissen hut, quickly constructed I think. And there's the other end of it. So I'm guessing the roof is long gone. Just see some plinths for something there. And look, here's some of this metal stuff that's the metal support, roof support, still in situ. Wow, amazing, amazing. So there's supposed to be two of these, so let's go and have a look at the other, see if we can find the other one. The other one is supposed to be closer to the road, so... Oh, there we are. Right. Right, let's get ourselves orientated. Oh, that's a better example of the cross-connecting corridor. And that's a road. This is in... I'm quite astonished really that you can't see this on Google Maps, because it's within 20 yards of the main road. Incredible. So yeah, definitely 1950s. Obviously that fly tip rubbish, isn't it? There's the curvature of the building. So if you look, even the old connecting bolts for the corrugated roof are still in situ. These are precast concrete blocks though. Toilet, I guess. Again, look, that iron rib's still in place for the roof, and the ventilation hole in there. So this is a lot later version than the previous one. Somebody's knocked the window out. Oh yeah. So you see these long huts down the side of here, which are existing. So according to the map, each one of these parking bays had one of those buildings in it. So if you can imagine a copy here, and there are actually 9 parking bays down there. So there was 9 buildings, and between each one there was one of those air raid shelters which were shown earlier. So it's quite a dense site. The next part of the story is hard to piece together, as there is a different perspective from New Zealand and Canadian historical documents, but from what I can piece together, it appears that at the start of the Second World War the hospital was taken over by the newly formed Emergency Hospital Service under the direction of the Ministry for Health, but was subsequently taken over by the Royal Canadian Army Medical Corps, who expanded the capacity of the hospital to 240 beds. You will recall that I mentioned that the central car parking area had 9 huts, which had been built in 1939 by the UK Emergency Medical Services and were subsequently taken over by the New Zealand Expeditionary Force for treatment of New Zealand combatants. Each hut was capable of housing 36 beds and so expanded the capacity of the hospital to 324. Across the site of the sanatorium, Canadian and New Zealand contingents, there was a spirit of cooperation between all the medical staff. TB patients were housed in prefabricated dormitories, and on the site the best preserved is currently occupied by 2nd Crowthorne Scout Group. The nurses were housed in Nissen Huts, of which only one survives on the site, although there are more examples on the opposite side of the road, on Old Wokingham Road. This is a theatre now. This one's a cafe now. Again, the roof has been reclad with something a bit safer. The windows have all been replaced with double glazing.